Urgent, frontline cauldron on standby. The armed forces of Ukraine have launched the plan of Retribution. The enemy is burning out in the fire. It's incredible. Our counteroffensive has crushed the enemy. After these battles, the Russian army was run over like a steamroller. Crimea, the road to the peninsula, is open. Ukraine did it. New missiles struck with precision. Flamingos and Neptunes came in unexpectedly but made a loud impact. There's hysteria in the Kremlin. Russians are screaming everywhere. Catastrophe. A full-blown plane crash, a new trap. Could it be that this is all because US Tomahawks have finally been launched? All of this in our episode Hellpoint. It happened with the AFU launching a counteroffensive on the hottest section of the front near Dobropilya. The noose for the enemy is tightening with deadly force. Our forces are preparing a real cauldron for the Russian army, with Russian soldiers whining at full volume. Extra firepower is being deployed. Russia is once again attacking from the old positions near Pokrovsk. Wave after wave, but all in vain. Every attempt is shattered by the resilience of our soldiers. What a resounding defeat our forces have prepared for the enemy at this very moment. More on that in just a second.
This is footage of a Ukrainian kamikaze drone which in the Pokrovsk direction destroys a truck carrying about half a dozen so-called liberators. For several weeks now, the Pokrovsk direction has remained the hottest spot. Out of 245 combat engagements recorded along the entire front line in a single day, 72 took place specifically in the Pokrovsk direction, and here the occupier is only increasing the number of attempts to break through the Ukrainian defenses. The paratroopers defending Pokrovsk are eliminating Russian units with drones several dozen kilometers away from Pokrovsk so that they cannot even get close to the city. A recent example, a Ukrainian FPV drone covered more than 40 kilometers, bypassed enemy electronic warfare, and in temporarily occupied Kurakove destroyed a Kamaz truck with personnel who were heading to storm Pokrovsk.
The defenders of Pokrovsk are expanding the kill zone for the occupiers. We strike the enemy not only on the approaches to Pokrovsk, but also deep in the rear. The fighter is cheap.
Work continues to improve logistics and the protection system for critical infrastructure facilities, and measures are being taken to prevent the Russians from advancing in this direction. The president of Ukraine stated that the Russian army is unsuccessfully trying to capture Pokrovsk due to a failed offensive and losses in the Dobropilya area. But right now, the Ukrainian armed forces are conducting a counteroffensive operation there, and the occupiers are suffering huge losses.
Particular attention right now. Of course, the Dobropilya operations, the counteroffensive operations since their beginning. And up to today, the Russians have already suffered more than 12,000 losses. That's just there, just in the areas of Pokrovsk and Dobropilya, specifically since August 21st. And out of these 12,000, more than 7,200 are irrecoverable losses for them.
Russian occupiers are also actively trying to advance towards Zaporizhia. Chief of the General Staff Gerasimov stated that this direction is now a priority.
The Dnipro group of forces is advancing in the direction of the city of Zaporizhia. Today, fighting is ongoing for control over the settlements of Primorsk and Stepnohirsk.
But despite the priority of this direction, the Russian army is experiencing a severe shortage of drones of various types. And Russian soldiers are basically begging their own population for donations.
And today, more than ever, we need your help. We need eyes to conduct reconnaissance and strike the enemy with drops.
Despite the proximity of the occupying forces to Zaporizhia, it is unlikely that they will be able to take or even approach this city of over 500,000 people.
Zaporizhia is a very large and significant industrial center, a major city and hub. Indeed, a number of very important industries for Ukraine are concentrated there. Of course, the village of Stepnohirsk is about 35 kilometers from the center of Zaporizhia. And accordingly, there is a significant temptation for Russian generals to try to approach the strategically important city of Zaporizhia and attempt to lay a prolonged siege to it. Taking the city would, of course, be very difficult. It's impossible.
On the border of Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Dnipropetrovsk regions, there are very intense actions involving the armed forces of Ukraine. 4 villages have been completely cleared, and fighting is ongoing for 4 more.
Urgent, a powerful attack on Crimea, striking precisely and decisively. The path to the peninsula is opening up. The West has given the green light. The liberation of Ukrainian lands is beginning. What was hard to believe just yesterday is becoming reality. A strike capable of turning the tide of the war. The Ukrainian armed forces are preparing to go all out. Moscow is already sending Crimea a deadly kiss. The turning point has come. The countdown has begun. Is the Crimean bridge living out its last days? All the details right now.
Ukraine may attack Crimea. Such a bold statement was made by analyst Michael Clark from King's College. And we're not talking about the usual strikes that the defense forces carry out every day, but about a large-scale one. According to Clark, Ukraine could launch an airstrike or a naval landing against Russian positions in Crimea. And in his opinion, this will happen before winter.
Ukrainians love to make surprises. They know that this affects not only the Russians on the front line, but also the West's perception of how things are going in Ukraine.
An analyst from KNU also believes that given Ukraine's long-range strike capabilities, an attack on the Kerch Bridge cannot be ruled out.
You can effectively create a significant breach in the air defense curtain, and then, subsequently, you'll definitely want to put something substantial through it in order to get something even more valuable and strategically important.
Ukraine has attacked the Kerch Bridge 3 times. In 2022, a truck loaded with the equivalent of 20 tons of TNT was used to strike the crossing. In 2023, the bridge was attacked by naval combat drones, and in 2025, the Security Service of Ukraine blew up the Kerch Bridge underwater. Explosives were planted near key supports. Supposedly, the analyst's suggestion about a 4th attack is encouraging, but official Kiev is not thrilled about it.
Undoubtedly, there's no need to write about this today. These are somewhat different stages of the war, and in general to announce intentions. For a war that has been going on for almost 4 years, it's not necessary. Russia is still investing a lot of resources in countering Ukraine. We can see everything they're doing. And I won't comment. It's not quite correct to discuss offensive operations.
Experts and military personnel are also against such loud statements. As for Crimea, demilitarization is indeed underway at full speed, but that's all you need to know.
First of all, let's put it this way. This is a private opinion of a private individual, which has nothing to do with the real state of affairs. The only way to interpret such a publication is as an emphasis that Crimea, the temporarily occupied Ukrainian peninsula, has not only remained on the agenda for our country's defense forces, but is now, I would even say, not just under active development, but is currently undergoing a very active stage of demilitarization of the temporarily occupied Crimea. All these so-called analytical calculations and forecasts, I want to emphasize once again, have nothing even close to do with the realities that are actually taking place. The reality at the moment is that the defense forces, in particular the main intelligence directorate, as you know, the security service, the defense forces, the Navy, the armed forces of Ukraine, and other relevant structures are carrying out the necessary work.
This work consists of ongoing targeted operations to destroy Russian radar systems, air defense installations, aircraft, and so on. All of this is something Ukrainians can witness almost every day, and this systematic destruction of Russian weaponry is not happening by chance, as confirmed by the spokesperson for the Ukrainian Navy, Dmytro Pletenchuk. This is exactly where it all begins.
If you want to influence the enemy on their own territory or on your own territory that the enemy has occupied, the first thing you need to do is eliminate all obstacles. This will give you an advantage in the air, which in turn means an advantage on the ground as well. In order to take action, you need to eliminate the enemy's means of counteraction, that is, destroy their air defense systems. That is why this is the priority target from which any other action begins.
But what exactly will the next action be? That is something you don't need to know. Speculation won't do any good either, especially from Western analysts. There's no need to interfere with the work of the defense forces, and this is a rule that Ukrainians have learned well over almost 4 years of full-scale war.
The explosive power of our forces has struck Russia. The Kremlin cried out in shock at such a surprise. A front line is unfolding right in the heart of Russia. Ukrainian ballistics, it seems, have already settled in on enemy territory. They fly in swarms and strike with precision. They are preparing to cut off Crimea with a flaming blow. Neptune is loaded and ready. Putin was not prepared for such a resounding defeat. A disaster with a black cloud is hanging right over the enemy's stronghold, and the defense forces keep pressing. We'll tell you what explosive surprise they've prepared for Russia.
The consequences of the war unleashed by Russia are starting to come back to its own territory. in the form of Ukrainian drones and long-range missiles. The General Staff suggests that after Belgorod, Muscovites themselves might soon find out firsthand what a blackout is.
The metaphor doesn't work. Darkness. To the left. Forward. Darkness. Forward. The metaphor doesn't work. Meanwhile,
2 more Russian regions, Tyumen and Sverdlovsk oblasts, have imposed restrictions on gasoline sales, no more than 30 liters per person. Previously, these new market rules had affected Khabarovsk Krai, Chelyabinsk Oblast, and the occupied Crimea. All these lines and empty gas stations are due to daily attacks on oil refineries. Commander-in-Chief Syrskyi stated that in September, under the Deep Strike program, there were reports of 70 hits on Russian territory.
We are destroying the production of fuel and lubricants, explosives, and other components of the Russian military-industrial complex in the aggressor country. In particular, oil refining in Russia has been reduced by 21%.
The intensification and expansion of Ukraine's so-called long-range strikes on Russian territory became one of the main topics at the president's meeting with the security bloc.
All Ukrainian long-range weaponry is becoming noticeably more advanced. We are constantly working on this. And we have already provided many different opportunities, specifically for production. The necessary finances, all the necessary support. We need to scale up their use just as significantly. We have clear plans for this for the coming months. Everything must be implemented. Ukrainian precision is already evident, but there should be more. It is absolutely fair that Ukraine is carrying out retaliatory strikes. Targeted strikes, and unlike Russia, we know precisely and clearly what our objectives are that we want to achieve.
At the moment, the carriers of strikes deep into Russian territory are the Flamingo and Neptune missiles. The company Firepoint announced the launch of production of the first ones at the end of the summer. At that time, videos of Flamingo launches appeared online. In the fall, analysts suggested, however, that they might have been launched at the territory of occupied Crimea. The publication Welt reported that it was Flamingo missiles that destroyed the FSB base on the peninsula. 3 missiles left craters with a diameter of 15 meters each. At that time, German journalists reported that about 50 missiles were coming off the assembly line each month, with plans to increase that to 200 per month. And now the Russians have supposedly shown fragments of a downed Flamingo missile. According to their data, it was hit over the territory of Rev by a Buk complex at an altitude of 100 meters and a speed of 600 kilometers per hour. Judging by the serial number, the occupiers assume this is the 106th munition produced in September. There is no reliable confirmation that the Flamingo destroyed the FSB base. Military analysts believe that the strikes, including these, could have been carried out by Neptune itself. Today, 3 modifications of it have already been tested and put into serial production in the Ukrainian defense industry. A 4th is being prepared.
It is currently undergoing tests. This is the long-range Neptune. This one has a range of over 1,000 kilometers. It is currently undergoing tests. It has already shown, let's say, positive results. Further tests are ongoing. Next, this issue is being addressed in parallel. This concerns putting it into serial production. I believe this is a series of Neptunes. First of all, it makes the country quite capable and highly effective. It reveals our combat potential because not every country in the world has cruise missiles. In the foreseeable future, these systems will be both sea-based and land-based, and with varying operational ranges.
For obvious reasons, Ukrainian weapons manufacturers do not share much information about strikes on the aggressor. But President Zelensky admitted to the press that the defense forces even combine them. And analysts recognize this as a successful practice that Ukrainians can adopt from their enemy.
This missile can be produced in larger quantities, but as a result, it may be cheaper than a high-tech missile like the Neptune missile. And here, there are a whole range of combinations. Again, the Neptune missile, being less detectable and more precise, can be used to clear a corridor. Or, for example, the opposite approach can be used. A series of Flamingo missiles, which are highly visible and inexpensive, can be deployed as decoys to draw the enemy's air defense forces away. Meanwhile, the Neptune missile will pass through at that moment, and the less visible missile will approach more precisely and deliver a targeted strike.
The Ukrainian military is now far from what it was at the beginning of the full-scale Russian aggression. The country's military and political leadership has finally realized that only local manufacturers can guarantee stable arms supplies to the front, provided, of course, that there is proper funding. But with each passing day, as a non-military expert, I notice more and more unknown drones appearing. Europeans and Scandinavian countries are showing increased interest not only in Ukraine's experience, but also in cooperating with Ukraine in the production of weapons that meet the realities of modern warfare.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
Now Putin has lost his own game to self-destruction, and the once famous missile carriers are retreating right in the air. It's hard to believe, but it's begun. Aircraft are crashing right during takeoff, barely holding on, resisting desperately. The number of losses among the crews is staggering, and the forecasts are frankly terrifying for the Kremlin. What is really happening in Russia right now, and will the skies be left without their iron birds? And ultimately, will Putin's fleet end up on the sidelines of history? The details are coming up in just a moment.
Through their own actions, the Russians have destroyed yet another fighter jet.
A MiG-31 fighter jet has crashed in Russia. The disaster occurred in the Lipetsk region. The crew managed to eject in time. It seems Russia has a new tradition now. MiGs take off only to make a spectacular crash landing.
The Russian Ministry of Defense confirmed the information, but of course did not name the cause of the crash.
This is both a problem of the Russian military-industrial complex when it comes to supplying spare parts, and a problem with maintaining the aircraft fleet, and accordingly the aircraft fleet itself. For the most part, these are already outdated KSR aircraft. They have already exceeded their operational service periods. That's why the accident rate among KSR aircraft is so high.
The most interesting thing is that this is already the fourth military plane to crash since the beginning of the year. The first was the Su-25.
In this
April, a Tu-22 M3 bomber which carries missiles crashed in Irkutsk. And the same fate befell the third fighter jet to crash this year, the Su-34.
Resuscitating it on the spot. Time was running out. He ejected, but as they say, landed on us.
Even without Ukraine's help, the Russians are successfully destroying themselves and their own equipment. But what is the reason for such disasters?
It's about comprehensive pressure from the Western countries, first and foremost the United States, the European Union, in terms of sanctions packages that do not allow the Russian side to fully supply the Russian aerospace forces with spare parts. Let me emphasize this problem once again. And it also exists in civil aviation. Moreover, at the moment, all attempts to implement so-called import substitution programs have essentially failed.
But wait, the Kremlin old man is sure that everything is great with Russia's combat aviation. They even managed to share it.
And now, despite the fact that we ourselves need combat aviation during the special military operation, I do not believe that our aviation industry enterprises are oversized. We not only fully meet the needs of the armed forces of the Russian Federation today, but also supply the necessary equipment for export. It is in extremely high demand.
At this very moment in time, it should be carefully noted that the Russian Federation has significantly and demonstrably lost its prominent position precisely due to its inherent inability to effectively scale up the production of advanced new fighter jets and various other crucial military items, all of which are essential for fulfilling the pressing needs of its numerous foreign partners and allies. It should also be noted that at the moment, the so-called Indian contracts are under threat of cancellation.
Well, alright, maybe things are better with civil aviation in Russia?
Today they're offering you flying coffins, and tomorrow there won't even be that. At least 4 million people will suddenly lose the ability to receive medical assistance, whether it's vital cargo or a summer vacation on the warm seashore.
But it seems that there are fewer and fewer operational civil aircraft in Russia, and by 2030, Ukraine risks losing half of its entire aircraft fleet.
Without imported components, the aviation industry is literally suffocating. Sanctions have cut Russia off from Boeing, Airbus, and their services. Domestic engines and electronics remain only on paper. This is not just a temporary crisis, it's a diagnosis for the entire Russian economy.
This also concerns expenses. Next year, the budget for production and repairs. The number of airplanes will decrease by 1.5 times.
The country is essentially sliding down and losing its leading positions in the global aviation market. Moreover, at the moment, the Russian Federation is not able to even make up for the shortage of aviation equipment in its domestic markets.
They promised it by the end of 2025, but unfortunately, they miscalculated. In Russia, the certification deadlines for the new IL-114 aircraft have been missed again. And the reason for the delay, oddly enough, is a lack of components, resources, and technologies.
The Russian Federation has been brought to its knees. Shock, Trump started acting tough. The USA has set a course for the total elimination of the Russian Federation. A decisive statement regarding the transfer of Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine and the imposition of extremely powerful sanctions on the Kremlin. They are shutting off the valves for the enemy. That's quite something about Smashko. Or is this already the beginning of the big game? Where is all this leading and what will happen next? Don't miss it in the upcoming story. Coming up.
The United States of America is preparing for war.
A simple but profound truth. To be confident in peace, we must prepare for war. From now on, the sole mission of the restored Ministry of War: to fight, to prepare for war and for victory, relentlessly and uncompromisingly. Not because we want war. We seek peace for our citizens.
It seems that across the ocean, they finally decided which side the truth is on. The US continues to supply Ukraine with weapons and resources. The Senate has approved the defense budget for the 2026 fiscal year, which allocates $500 million in aid to Kyiv. According to CNN, the document was supported by 77 senators, with only 20 voting against it.
Indeed, the United States may now move to a new and significant stage, focusing intently on the crucial process of achieving lasting peace. At this moment, the United States currently possesses the greatest capabilities. This applies both to economic pressure and to moving to the next stage. It also concerns military aid to Ukraine, and this too is within the capabilities of the US. I mean, not only sales, but also lifting the bans on the use of certain weapons that, according to reports, are already in storage in Ukraine.
At the same time, CM Donald Trump stated that the issue of providing Ukraine with cruise missiles and Tomahawks is almost resolved.
I can say this: it is obvious that weapons with a larger warhead and greater range can change Putin's calculations. But at the same time, more active efforts to intercept the Shadow Fleet can also have an effect. Moreover, the entire current package of Ukraine's requests, which is now being implemented very quickly, is yet another testament to the determination of NATO and our allies from the United States. This is not only about air defense systems to protect Ukrainians, but also about very serious types of weaponry that Ukrainians will be able to use directly on the battlefield.
Along with this, the United States is strengthening NATO's positions. The head of the White House stated that in the event of an attack by Russia, America is ready to defend, in particular, Finland, Poland, and the Baltic countries.
Because Trump became convinced that in a long, drawn-out war, the Western alliances would not lose. And in fact, it is the anti-Western alliances, leaders who are openly demonstrating their ambitions, that would gain influence. As long as they are demonstrating these ambitions, the West really needs to show effectiveness and readiness to prevent those ambitions from becoming reality, to truly restore the system to some kind of global rule of law.
And it seems that the Trump administration is not acting alone. A new Harvard University poll shows that an overwhelming majority of Americans support a tougher Washington policy toward Russia. Among both Democrats and Republicans, most support providing weapons to Ukraine and imposing new sanctions against Moscow. 72% and 73% respectively.
There are even more supporters of additional economic sanctions. 71% of Democrats and 86% of Republicans. Moreover, 76% of Democrats and 86% of Republicans believe that Europe should stop buying energy from Russia and instead purchase it from the United States. Countries that continue to trade with Moscow should face additional tariffs. This is the opinion of 55% of Democrats and 66% of Republicans.
Given that such a serious, highly respected and reputable organization meticulously conducted this comprehensive survey, it can therefore be regarded with a very high level of absolute trust and complete confidence. And I have to say this is a truly positive and encouraging trend, because not so very long ago we observed the exact opposite dynamic when the overall number of people supporting crucial aid, especially vital military aid to Ukraine, was noticeably decreasing. However, now we are clearly seeing a significantly different and more favorable trend emerging. This is important, and we will definitely take this into account. Well, at the very least, Trump and his administration should take this into account. As we all know, Donald Trump consistently pays very close attention to public sentiment, and the undeniable fact that these significant leading trends now clearly show a substantial majority actively supporting aid to Ukraine, even among his own Republican Party base, should most definitely influence his position.
Times are changing. America is making it clear that the Kremlin regime will not go unpunished. Support for Ukraine, strengthening NATO, and readiness to defend allies. All of this signals that the US is seriously committed to deterring escalation. By showing resolve, any new aggressive moves and refusal to move toward peace will lead to grave consequences.
That's all from me for now. This was Yaderina Hutsakalo. Even more hot news in our next episode.
In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe and like. See you soon!